Guys, what's going on? James here. Bed's not made, I know, and it's like, whoa, James, what's this? Okay, so this is the Buccaneers' first unofficial depth chart. You can see it right on top there. Bucs unofficial depth chart. This is probably going to be the depth chart that we are seeing for the Buccaneers' first preseason game versus the Miami Dolphins. So shout out to Nicholas Cuffle for keeping me updated. I actually just got home from work about an hour ago, and I have to wake up at 6 a.m. to go to the Bucs training camp, so this is going to be up pretty early. So shout out to Nicholas for keeping me updated on Facebook, and also shout out to Eugene Burke as well for talking to me about stuff on Facebook. And yeah, so we're going to be going through each and everything. We're going to be going from the top of the list all the way down to the bottom of the list and talking about stuff, what I expected personally, what we see, just stuff. We're going to be talking about all of it. And obviously everything with a line under it, those are rookies who are on this depth chart. So yeah, hopefully you can see all of it. Let me actually see if I can make it a little bit bigger. There we go. That should be a good enough room. So let's go start with the first thing, okay? DeSean Jackson is the number 2 wide receiver to start off this list. So if you can see how they've done it, they've kind of done it in how their full, their offense would be set up, full. If they could put every offensive starter out there, that's how it would look. So ideally, they would have a twin tight end set, a whole offensive line, 2 wide receivers, quarterback, and running back. That's probably one of their more popular sets that they're going to be using. So that's the set that they decided to go with there. And then for the defensive line, obviously they're running a 4-3 with 2 defensive ends, 2 defensive tackles, 3 linebackers, 2 cornerbacks, and 2 safeties. So for nickel, obviously things would be different, and then for different offensive lineups, things will be different. But this is really the main. This is like the main lineup that they're going to be using. This is going to be like the main starters that we're going to be seeing. But remember, this is unofficial, so. But anyway, to start things off, DeSean Jackson is the number 2 wide receiver. Following that, you have Adam Humphries, then Freddie Martino, Jake Lampman, Bernard Reedy, and Irvin Phillips. This one's interesting to me because there was a rumor going around recently that Chris Godwin, as you can see, he's right there behind Mike Evans at the number 1 wide receiver spot. A lot of people were saying that Chris Godwin has officially taken over DeSean Jackson's role as the number 2 wide receiver, and that DeSean Jackson was going to be working in the slot a little bit more over Chris Godwin, and that still may be the case, but according to this first unofficial depth chart, that isn't the case right now. DeSean Jackson is still the number 2 wide receiver. He may get more looks in the slot than he has in the past year, but as it stands right now, it looks like Godwin's still the slot, at least according to this depth chart. It could be wrong, but I do know that there was that rumor going around. I was going to make a video about it, but I figured I would talk about it here. So as it stands, it looks like DeSean Jackson is still the number 2 wide receiver. You got to assume Adam Humphries is probably the number 4, and then it looks. I'm gonna assume that this means that it goes Mike Evans, then DeSean Jackson, then Chris Godwin, then Adam Humphries, then Bobo Wilson, then Freddie Martino, then Justin Watson maybe, or Jake Lampman. I honestly don't know how to gauge that one. That's kind of weird, but you can assume that right now Bobo Wilson's probably the 5th wide receiver. Adam Humphries is your number 4. And guys like Freddie Martino, Jake Lampman, Justin Watson, Sergio Bailey, Tanner Hudson. Or is Tanner Hudson at tight end? No, yeah, Tanner Hudson's at tight end. Sergio Bailey, Bernard Reedy, Irvin Phillips. Those guys are all lumped together at the wide receiver core. They're kind of lumped together as that 7th, 8th wide receiver spot. So we should be seeing a lot of them in those preseason games for sure. Taking a look at the 2 tight ends, you have Cameron Brate and O.J. Howard. That's expected. It still looks like Cameron Brate's the number 1 tight end, I think. I'm not too sure. Obviously, in 2 tight end sets, it doesn't matter a whole heck of a lot. But you still have Anthony Alclair there. You still have Alan Cross, who they have labeled as a tight end. I guess that kind of makes sense considering there's no fullback on this list. So that makes total sense to me. Austin Johnson's still there. You also have some guys like Donnie Ernsberger, which, he's a rookie. I expect him to maybe make the practice squad. He's another one of these guys we're going to be seeing. Jason Reese, Tanner Hudson. It's pretty interesting. It does get kind of confusing to look at the back end because you get all those names lumped together, but hopefully I'm doing an okay job of it. Offensive line, no surprises there. Donovan Smith, Ali Marpet, Ryan Jensen, Caleb Beninock, and DeMar Dodson are all the starters. Alex Cappa is the backup right guard. That's also another expected thing. Evan Smith is the backup center, which, I kind of expected that to slide in. I don't think the Bucs technically had him labeled as a center, but here they do, so we can assume that he's the backup center once more. Adam Geddes is the back sliding in at the backup left guard spot. That's pretty interesting to me, considering how you have guys like Mike Lidke, who has been on this roster, on and off for a couple of years now, and I thought honestly he might have the edge over Adam Geddes, but right now it looks like he has the edge. Leonard Wester, backup left tackle. I don't think that's honestly going to change. Cole Gardner, backup right guard. So right now he has the edge over guys like Brad Seaton. Newly signed right tackle Jerry Ngakwe. I don't know. We have some hard last names on this team. So yeah, not a whole lot of surprises. Maybe by the time they update this depth chart, maybe Alex Cappa is the starting right guard. I know Benenak's been doing some good things, but I also heard they got kicked out of practice for getting into a fight and then some other stuff. So I still like Benenak a lot. I think he's going to end up being he could end up being the starter, but I'm saying, maybe Kappa has a realistic chance as well. Quarterback position, no surprises here. Jameis Winston is your starting quarterback. Obviously, this is a lineup where it would assume like, okay, if Jameis could play, he would be our starter. That makes total sense. He's the franchise guy. He's not going anywhere this year. After that, you have Ryan Fitzpatrick, Ryan Griffin, and Austin Allen. Again, no surprises here. Moving on to the running back position, Peyton Barber's your starter. Yeah, that's fine. A little interesting to see Jaquiz Rodgers as the backup running back right now, and then you have Ronald Jones and Charles Sims tied. They always do an interesting thing, and you can kind of see that they do it weird for different positions, but depending on like certain rookies, they'll be at the very bottom of the depth chart in some situations. But here you can see that like Alex Kappa's the backup, and other guys like Irvin Phillips, Jason Reese, Ernst Berger, and Cole Bouger, they're all way back in the depth chart. So to see Ronald Jones be kind of technically tied for the third string running back role with Charles Sims, that's kind of interesting. They're both ahead of guys like Shaun Wilson, who could work his way up the depth chart. Maybe it'll end up being Peyton Barber at the 1, Jones at the 2, Shaun Wilson at the 3. And maybe Jaquiz Rodgers at the 4. That's something that they could definitely do. But right now, Shaun Wilson's in the back with Dare Agunbowell. I don't know if I said that right. But anyway, yeah, again, a lot of this depth chart, there's not a whole lot of surprises. Moving on to the defensive end position, and the defensive in general, I guess you should say. Vinny Curry, Gerald McCoy, Bo Allen, Jason Pierre-Paul. That's what we expected it to be. The backups, Spence and Golston, are your primary backup defensive ends. Unrein and Vita Vea are your primary backup defensive tackles. A little bit surprised. I thought that Vita Vea might have been behind a guy like Stevie Tuipulotu. I thought that, since they usually do, they slide in these rookies in like the super backup roles. It's a little surprising, to see Vita Vea as like, I think, the number 4 defensive tackle, but he was your first round pick, so that makes sense. I expect these updated depth charts eventually to have, some of these guys be starters. Ronald Jones would maybe be a number 1. Alex Kappa might be your starting right guard. Vita Vea might be your number 3 or number 2 defensive tackle. It just takes time. I'm really hoping that Stevie Tuipulotu makes this roster. I really like what he brings in terms of size. He reminds me of a little bit like Vita Vea in terms of just his overall size. So I'm hoping that he can make the roster. Guys like Devontae Lambert, Evan Parisot, Patrick O'Connor, they're going to have a tougher time. But right now, it looks like Stevie Tuipulotu is like the last defensive tackle on the roster. He's like the 6th stringer. So that's interesting. Will Clark, one of your 3rd string defensive ends to go along with Damone Harris. So shout out to Damone Harris. I know some people were raving about him and they were pretty excited about him. So, it's cool. Moving on to the linebacker position. Now, this is taking into account that Kendall Beckwith won't be able to play because he's injured. So your linebackers are Darius Taylor, Levante David, Quan Alexander. Those are your starting 3. Darius Taylor playing at the left outside linebacker position, formerly Darius Glanton. Shout out to him, by the way. He's a wonderful player for this team. I really like Darius Taylor. I'd love to meet Darius Taylor one day, Glanton, whatever you want to call him. When he broke his leg in that Monday Night Football game versus the Atlanta Falcons. I felt so bad for him because he's a really versatile player, and he really has the ability to be maybe even a starter one day. Like, I really like Adarius Glenn. I hope he's on the team for a long time. Like, he's really good in my opinion. The backup linebackers are Devontae Bond, Riley Below, and Cameron Lynch. So like I talked about in my last video, for players to watch out for in the preseason game versus the Dolphins, these guys pretty much have command over the backup linebacker spots right now. So guys like Jack Sitchie, specifically Shaheed Salmon, that's funny, and Nigel Harris, those guys are working on some backup spots. Kendall Beckwith is in parentheses back there because he is hurt, and Eric Nizocha. Those guys have a little bit of work to do as well. Cornerback position. So right now, the way things are looking, okay, it's interesting because right now, Carlton Davis, right now your starting cornerbacks are Brent Grimes and Vernon Hargreaves the third. After that, I'm assuming that Ryan Smith is. I want to say Ryan Smith is like your second option at the number 2 option. So if they were to go to nickel, then you would slide in Ryan Smith first. He's your first guy to try out at that number 2 spot when Hargreaves goes on the inside. That's what I think that this means. And then Carlton Davis is your second option to slide into that role as outside cornerback when they go to nickel packages. Okay, that's what I think that means. I know that looks kind of confusing, and it may, like, if we were going off of my former way of reading this, then Ryan Smith would be like the nickel corner, and that's not the case because they're using Hargreaves in more of that hybrid role. That means that whenever they go to nickel, and Hargreaves goes to the slot, Ryan Smith is the first cornerback to slide into that number 2 spot. Then I would assume Carlton Davis, and then for guys like Javian Elliott and MJ Stewart, those guys are probably the second and third nickel options, I would assume. With guys like David Rivers and Marco Myers kind of rounding that all out. Maybe he's outside, maybe he's inside. I'm not too sure. That's the way I'm reading it. I know it's very tough to. I know it's like a very hard thing to read, especially, but that's how I'm reading it. And like I assume it's like, oh, okay, well, if Brent Grimes goes out, Carlton Davis gets subbed in, or if Vernon Hargreaves has to go out, then Ryan Smith gets subbed in. That's how I'm reading it. I know it's kind of hard to read the cornerback position, but hopefully I read that right. I'm not sure. Moving up over to the safeties, you have Chris Conte and Justin Evans as your starters. Again, everybody predicted a lot of these things. You guys in the comments section have just been nailing it with some of these predictions lately. So shout out to you guys. There's not a whole lot of surprises here. After that, you have Keith Tandy as the backup. I assume that Justin Evans is your starting free safety and Chris Conte is your starting strong safety, by the way. That's what I can assume. So Keith Tandy's your backup strong safety. Isaiah Johnson right now is your backup free safety. So shout out to Isaiah Johnson. I think, I don't know if I'm reading this right. I'm trying to remember. I'm pretty sure this is right. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Either way, one or the other. But right now, Isaiah Johnson and Keith Tandy are your primary backup safeties. Shout out to Isaiah Johnson. He had a really nice special teams play last year, where he returned a punt for a touchdown. So that was really cool to see. Jordan Whitehead and Josh Robinson come after them. Again, Josh Robinson is just so freaking valuable on special teams, and they label him as a safety. But I think he's really, if there was if in the specialist column they had like a special teams ace, it would be Josh Robinson. Jordan Whitehead, right now, obviously, he's going to be at the back of the depth chart. We should be seeing a lot of guys like Jordan Whitehead and Josh Liddell and Godwin Igwebuike. We should be seeing a lot of them. It doesn't look too good for Godwin considering he's that far back on the safety depth chart. Still, I'm hoping that he can have some good plays in special teams and really go out there and perform well with the time that he's given. We should be seeing a lot of them. By the way, Austin Allen in the back at the quarterback position, so shout out to Austin Allen. Moving on to special teams, you have Brian Anger, Chandler Catanzaro, Trevor Moore is the backup kicker, which, honestly, poor Trevor Moore. He's just having a fun time. I think he's just auditioning for other teams at this point, H. What does H mean? I don't really know what H means, but Brian Anger's the H position. I don't know what that... Holder? Is it holder? Maybe it's holder. If it is kick holder, like if it's like, okay, place kicker, Chandler Catanzaro, kickoffs, that's Chandler Catanzaro, holder. So Brian Anger's your holder. And then Keith Tandy's your backup holder. That's kind of interesting. So if Brian Anger got hurt, like he hurt his hand or something, and he had to sit out the game, you would assume that Chandler Canzaro would be the punter, maybe, or somebody else would be the punter, and then Keith Tandy would be the holder on field goals. That's how I'm reading this right now. And then Ryan Griffin would be the third string holder for field goals. That's really interesting. That makes Keith Tandy pretty kind of valuable, I think. Yeah, hey, if our guy ever gets injured, Keith Tandy, you're the new holder. I like that. I kind of like that a lot, actually. Long snapper, you have Drew Ferris, and then after that you have Adarius Glanton, which again just shows how versatile he can be. Hey, you need me to be a linebacker? I can be a linebacker. You need me to be a long snapper? I can be a long snapper. And then finally you have Alec Cross as your third string long snapper. Punt returning and kick returning. Okay, I want to talk about this a little bit because for punt returning, Adam Humphries is your starting punt returner. Okay, he did it a little bit last year. No problems with that. And your backup is DeSean Jackson. I really, really, really hope that DeSean Jackson makes his way to the number one punt returning spot. He, to me, is one of the more electric punt returners we have. I want to get more speed back there. You see Bernard Reedy, you see Shaun Wilson. All three of those guys are really speedy. Jackson, Reedy, and Wilson. Those guys are really speedy, and I want to see all three of them get a chance at punt returner. I think we will in this first preseason game. So that's pretty nice. And then a kick returner, actually, you have Jaquiz Rogers and Bernard Reedy. This is kind of where I like Bernard Reedy because hopefully he can show how versatile he can be as a kick returner. I think you're going to be seeing a lot of Jaquiz Rogers and Bernard Reedy to start at kick returner since they have to have two returners back there for the most part. After that, you have Josh Robinson, which is a little bit of a surprise for me. You have Shaun Wilson and Ronald Jones. Now, I don't know how Ronald Jones would do as a kick returner. I would assume good, considering how speedy he is. But I don't know if you want to use him that much, because then he might get tired later on in games. But I don't know. I think you should primarily use him as a running back. But, hey, whatever. Hopefully guys like Shaun Wilson, Bernard Reedy, DeSean Jackson, hopefully those three guys get their opportunities to be very versatile returners, and they can make a lot of progress and hopefully make the roster that way. I mean, obviously DeSean Jackson will make the roster, but for like guys like Shaun Wilson and Bernard Reedy, I want them to make the roster, and if they can show that they're really good returners, well then that will go a long way. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this depth chart review. Again, it's been up here the whole time, so hopefully you guys have had a good chance to read about all of it. There's not, it's basically exactly what we all thought it was going to be. William Golston, Damone Harris, Keontae Anderson are your backups at defensive end. All your starters pretty much lined up. I mean, if it was me personally, what would I change? I don't know. I mean, I guess I'd move Ronald Jones up for sure. I'd probably move him up to at least the number 2 spot. The defensive line looks good. I honestly kind of like Vita Vea at the number 4 spot right now. I'd probably move him up maybe to number 3. Linebackers look really nice to me. Cornerbacks look nice to me for right now. I would have maybe moved Carlton. I would have moved MJ Stewart up a little bit more considering how good of a training camp he's having. So I for sure would have moved him up. I might have even made Keith Tandy the starter. Possibly. Me personally, I just really love Keith Tandy. I definitely would have had DeSean Jackson be our starting punt returner because the dude's electric. I honestly don't know why the Redskins didn't use him as a punt returner, and I don't know why we don't use him as a punt returner. I just want an electric return game again because that can really change the flow and the momentum of a game. So, just add that to another list of James's complaints, I guess you should say. I also want to see Bernard Reedy move up a little bit on the returning depth chart. Hopefully he can with some of these preseason games. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. So if like a regular season were to be played today, this is kind of the general depth chart you would be seeing for the most part, I think. Because I know a lot of people say, oh, you shouldn't take any of this into account. It's whatever. Well, still, they have to come up with something. So they're probably sitting there and thinking, like, this is basically a rough draft. This is basically a rough draft of what their starting lineups would look like, right? This is probably them putting, like, not too much thought into it. Okay, let's pencil in all these guys, whatever. So it's something, right? It's not nothing. I don't think it's like, it's definitely not nothing. It's like a rough draft. So, you know, it is what it is. I like it. I think it's a very nice lineup that we have going for us. So yeah, let me know what you think about all this down in the comment section below. I know this is a very long video, and hopefully I gave you guys a lot of information about all of this, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. So yeah, I'll see you guys at training camp tomorrow morning about 10. Expect another live stream where I'll be live streaming the entire inside portion of the practice. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and as always, I will see you in the next video or live stream, which should be tomorrow. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, goodbye for now, guys, and go Bucs.